Good morning, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us today. I'm Karen Lightman. I'm Executive Director of Metro 21 Smart Cities Institute at Carnegie Mellon University. I'm just going to take a quick few minutes to introduce Metro 21. The 21 in our name comes from the concept of 21st century solutions being used, technology as a tool to solve real world problems. And we do that region-wide. We are campus-wide, interdisciplinary, all 7 colleges plus the library. We do this through collaboration and partnerships. We have close to 80 nonprofit, municipal, quasi-government, municipal collaborations across the region. We also have memos of understanding with several entities. And again, what we do is what we call it RD&D, research, development, and deployment. And we've been doing this since our inception in 2015. And we have probably deployed over 60, 70 projects in that time. And let's see, let me get to my next slide here. We have these goals that we focus and aspire to. You can read them right here. And really it's about, again, using technology as a tool to help solve real world problems. And we strive for things like, safe mobility, the idea that there should be vision zero, net zero energy, right? Equitable economic development, healthy and healthy citizens, smart buildings and infrastructure. Please go to our website to get more information on our projects. And we have really great resources. We've got a lot going on. We follow social media. We tweet, we're on Instagram, we've got a podcast, we're on LinkedIn, and my email is right here at the bottom. And today I'm so thrilled to have with us Sera, who is with the University of Pittsburgh, GPSIA. Incredible experience. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself. I'm gonna let you go to share your slides. So you'll be able to do that right now, Sera. And we got to know each other because Sera, during the pandemic, and I think as a result of the George Floyd murder and a lot of kind of questioning of what was going on in the world, I think you actually put it into action and you used the classroom as a way of imperfect attempts to serve while wearing your hat as a professor. And we're so grateful for the work that you're doing and so grateful that you're here with us. So Sera, the floor is yours. I'm going to give you about 40 minutes. And then we are so thrilled that so many of you have submitted questions. And we're at the time when we're ready, we're going to unmute you and you'll be able to ask those questions live for Sera. We are so grateful that you're here with us. I'm going to give you the floor and please take it away.
So hi everyone, thank you Karen. Thank you Karen for having me. Thank you Joyce for setting this up. So I'm the founding director for CAASI, it's a very long name there, at GPSIA at the University of Pittsburgh. And just a little bit about myself, I'm from West Kalimantan, Borneo in Indonesia, and I did my bachelor's in computer science, and I worked in corporate for a while. I was at the PDF library, so that was my programming background. And then I went to get a PhD in social science, and it was very interdisciplinary. And I was, working with a Yahoo CISL lab. And so it was like a very interdisciplinary environment. And then that whole time there, I also got some experience with local social justice organizing through School on Wheels, which pairs volunteers with homeless kids. So that's a little about my background. So what I'm going to talk about today is about why it's difficult to serve the community from academia. And then I'm going to talk about students' roles, what can students do? And I'm going to talk about what Karen was talking about, our initiative at CAASI called Grief to Action. And Grief to Action has launched 2 platforms. So one is the Allegheny County Policing Platform, and which I saw a lot of questions was about. And the other one is 412 Connect, which is a platform to connect Black-owned businesses and Black nonprofits with the university community. And now I'll talk a little bit about lessons. Okay. So as we all know, universities are increasingly challenged to be an engaged institution. Every school has an engagement statement, but a lot of criticism about whether this engagement is done correctly or is done in the most beneficial way. And then if we look at inside of academia, we can see that people in academia engage unevenly with engagement. So for example, the survey of 40,000 faculty find that 81% believe the university have a responsibility to engage, but less than half of them actually is doing anything about it. Less than half use their scholarship to address community needs. Like 40% collaborate with the local community, and 46% believe that their institution actually places a high priority on it. And so you then have like gender imbalances. This particular study, I don't think have like the racial imbalances, but I'm sure it's in there too. But more men than women view the use of community service and coursework as a poor use of resource. Only 32% have ever used service learning in their courses. 1.5 times more women than men has used it. And then there's a divide as well in like, you know, what sometimes people think of as like soft and hard disciplines. It's mostly used in ed and public health. It's not much used in math, statistics or engineering. So what I'm interested in talking about today is like data science area. So some attempts to engage in data science are like civic tech hackathon, code fest, data dives. These are popular with students because you can expand your network, make lots of friends, you increase your confidence in your tech skills, you get really excited about your classes because you're actually using it. And it's popular to university because it's not a huge investment. You have like a time-bound event and then you get your students to start and you have like a great reputational benefit out of it. But this hackathon projects rarely makes like a deep impact. So for example, MIT is like studying this, like what happens next, right? Like how can we hack the hackathon so that it actually has an impact? So there's a lot of studies showing that these time-bounded events are too small to be useful. And then everybody starts saying like, I'm going to continue, this is going to be great. I'm going to, you know, integrate this into the real world, but the reality is very different. So we might say, okay, let's expand the hackathon. Hackathon's one weekend. What about service learning, right? So you get to link the classroom with real world, you get to connect theory and practice. And with the students, you know, studies have shown that this increases active engagement, like you're not passively listening to an expert. You get a sense of community, like you finally know where you live. You're like, oh, I am on this campus here and here are the people around me. And then you get a sense of meaning, like I'm actually, you know, I have agency, I can activate change. And then increasing understanding of course material, which is popular for faculty too. They want their courses to actually make a bigger impact. Faculty is found educationally transformational, personally meaningful. They become a learner more than just like you know, like an expert standing up front. And then with university, it brings reputational impact and create better university community relationships. But these service learning projects are also time-bound, right? They're like one semester, and they're also driven by a curriculum of a single classroom. So if you see articles like this that looks at who does service learning really serve, they talk about things like, you know, students end their relationship with the organizations, like, you know, several weeks into it takes them several weeks to get integrated, and then several weeks later, they end their relationship with the organization when they're just finally feeling comfortable with it, when they're just leaving, right? And they would have become better volunteers if they stay longer, or if they understood the situation better. And sometimes it's that people come in with a specific classroom objective that may not correspond with the organizational needs. But because there is this curriculum they have to abide to, then the interaction has to be a specific way, right? But I think a more deeper issue could be that, like, in order to, the efforts that a lot of people have put into improving systemic inequality from academia runs across systemic inequality in academia. So what I mean here is you have academic incentive prioritizing research over teaching, teaching over engagement. And even in research, what is cool research, publishable research, prestigious research also depends on tastemakers who are not the community members. And so people who engage in this have serious career concerns. It's time consuming. It requires very difficult skills that are not always rewarded by academia. And then in order to actually be effective, you have to have multidisciplinary, community-centered work, and the output there is hard to measure, right? And to compound this problem, you have selection on intrinsic motivation. As you've seen earlier in the survey, not everybody wants to engage in this. And so there's a selection into this, and studies have found that faculty that chooses this engaged approach have like a prior personal history that makes social change meaningful, right? So it means, you know, maybe they're from a diverse population, maybe they have diverse socioeconomic background, but these are the kind of faculty that, you know, is important for diversity and might have been marginalized earlier. And so by engaging in this, marginalized member of academia may be further marginalized, right? So there's just this a whole bunch of systemic issue that makes it difficult for us to do engagement from academia. Hence, this is what engagement looks like. University comes, like, here, I'm doing something hard and technical and, like, you know, exciting for you, and community is like, okay, cool. And then semester is over, you didn't get your grant, the research question isn't good enough, they get out, right? So sad. So can we do anything differently, right? So should we even be in this business of social change? And so I want to say yes. And you see that arrow there. I want to say yes because I'm going to show you sort of like all the different steps that is needed to do kind of like a data science for like a public interest technology, right? Like a data science for good that is implemented outside. And I'm going to argue that these skills are really hard to gather outside of an academic environment. And these skills are spread all across different disciplines and even administrative units. And if you string them together, they actually create a very effective public interest technology production center. All right, so what are these? So first, there's demand and request for projects. And for example, we need to do X. And then there's a scoping process, which is this project doable? Is there data available? Can we complement the data? Then there's a team formation. There's student members, there's student leads, there's community members, there's staff and faculty advisor. And then you have to develop an algorithm. You have to actually do the data collection. You have to do content development, and you have to do the programming. And then, sorry, my thing is right there. And then you have to do user testing and feedback. Sorry, you have to move my screen around. So give me a second because I can't quite see my own. Okay, now I can see my own screen. It was blocking it. Okay, and then then say you're done. You're done. Now you have to deploy it, right? So when you have to deploy it, you have to figure out, can it take this many users? Is the server set up correctly? And then you have to do marketing. Like, are the people who this is intended for hearing about it? And then you have to integrate it into this real world justice, social justice ecosystem, or into a policy realm, right? Like, get a different kind of skills. And then if you want to go to the next step, there's stewardship and tech transfer, right? Can I take this public interest technology and like actually give it to the community? Okay, what kind of legal agreement should we put there? What kind of documentation should I put in? There's data documentation, there's the programming documentation, there's the management documentation. And then how much tech support is needed like afterwards following? And then at the end, which is like, this is how the number 9 is like where academics usually start, which is, now can we take this and then can we create reusable knowledge out of it, right? Like publish papers. And then we go back into this process, we go back to number 1 and iterate around and around. And hopefully at the end of it, we have something that resembles what the community actually needs and is integrated within an ecosystem, right? So what I'm saying is, university have all of these resources, right? So you can think of like the people here at demand request, people in social work, people in public health that are really used to talking to organizations, right? You can think of user testing and feedback, people who do field experiments, right? Like economists developing algorithm, people in computer science and information science. So in each one of this, you can point to an academic unit or a discipline that does this really, really, really well, and have people in those units or disciplines that really, really wants to do this for the community. The problem is they're spread all over the place. And as we've seen before, this is not their main job, right? Like they have a job and they have like a little bit of time in which they really do want to do this and they're really good at it, right? So how do you harness like all these resources, all these things that we have in the university? Okay, so I have 2 goals here. So one is maybe we can sustain this tech for good projects across semesters, right? So the university, one class comes in, write some code, and then another person overlaps with them and then expand upon that. And then this guy can leave and then another person, so the guy with glasses is now taking over and then you add another person there, and then he writes more code. And so now this has become a more substantive chunk of product, and then that guy leaves, right? But we're not done there. So now you have a bunch of like complicated code that like does something. Now you have to transition the tech into something that the community can own, right? So you have that chunk from the classroom work, and then you actually have to create this multidisciplinary team. You know, you have someone who is really good at thinking about the management side, and then you have an artist there. And then together they create like a product that is recognized by the community as like, this is something I can own, this is something I can play with, this is something I can manage. But still the community is like, phew, this is a lot of work. I'm not really sure if I want to take over this. Okay, you say. So then you bring some of the people over, and then you stay with them on the community side, like looking at what they're experiencing as they are taking over this thing. And then you keep like people on your side that is doing user interface and stuff like that. And this other guy can leave, right? Because, you know, he has to go back to his day job or something like that, take another class. All right. And then once the community is comfortable with it, then, you know, everyone can take off. And then now you've achieved community ownership. So that would be a lot of community power, right? With transferring power to the community. So why should students be in the driver's seat of this? So I would say this is a case of incentives. Like this is a case of the aligned incentives. So students really do want their work to have an impact. And if they're taking classes and the work in the class is something that is like passed on from one set of students to another for them to steward, they have a tremendous sense of responsibility over it. And they know that their work will also get passed on to somebody else, right? And in some cases, the students really know much more about what's going on in their community than we do, than the faculty and staff do. They come from these experiences. And in doing this work, they gain a specific role in their academic education. They become leaders. They learn to become team players with undergraduates, PhD masters, you know, their faculty member. And then they become community members. There's also a lot of strategic skills that they can learn out of this that is useful for their CV. Like you now, as you do your work, you are preparing to onboard and train someone else. Like that's a completely different mindset than it's like, I'm gonna finish this, you know, do the minimum to get an A and then get out of here, right? It's like, no, like what I do is from someone else. And then when I am done, I will onboard someone else. I will train them in what I've done, right? So what I'm doing better be worth training someone else to take over. Right? And then writing documentation and reusable code. So there's a lot of different career types of skills that you can look at, you can see in this process. So I'm now going to share one instance of our attempt to do this. So like, I'm not sharing it because it's perfect. We have a lot of questions ourselves. I don't think we addressed the systemic inequality issue that I brought up earlier. I also, like all of us, have questions about long-term sustainability. But I think I really want to talk about this because, you know, number one, if you are experiencing this yourself, like I want you to know that you're not alone. And then number two, if you're not experiencing this, then you should contact us because we want to learn from you. And number three, if you're a decision maker, we didn't help in like making all of this happen. So I just want to have that conversation. So with that, okay, I'll kind of show you how we how this one instance occurs. So CAASI started fall 2019 as sort of just like a, you know, your typical like econ CS-ish like lab academic, you know, that does like academic work. And then when George Floyd's murder happened, a lot of it just completely like destroyed. And like we basically just did it as like an open call to be together, to breathe together. Like it wasn't really anything more ambitious than that. And then from that, we were, you know, we met every week, and then people started, we spent 5 minutes in mindfulness. So we always reset like at a you know, a basis where we realized that we are all the same, right? That we can trust each other, that we will be there, that like we don't have any answers. And people kept returning. And so people would bring their neighbors, their friends. So we just started having a very eclectic selection of people. And then people start having ideas and they're like, oh, I really want to do, I really want to get Pitt contracting to look at their Black businesses thing, or I really want to help Campaign Zero. So the ideas all started like that. From George Floyd's, from June 2020 to now, we have met every week, basically, like almost uninterrupted, except for like Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so we've had 180 volunteers join us. And so every semester we'll have about like 30. There's been, I'll show you later, there've been like 6 transition points. Basically, I think people know that at the end of every semester is like your potential death trap where something might die and like never reemerge. So we've been through like these iterations. And then, as I say, like the 2 projects are the Allegheny County Policing Project, which is a searchable library of 100+ police contracts. I'll go into this in detail. And then the website is grieftoaction.org, so feel free to check it out. And then 412 Connect, which is a local organization curated scavenger hunt of assets, community assets in minoritized community. So for next semester, we're going to do a scavenger hunt of nonprofits and Black-owned businesses in Homewood that would be curated by the Pitt Homewood CEC, and this would actually be a CMU orientation activity. So it's like really great, the 2 schools working together. The website right now is 412connect.org. Okay, so how do we work? So as I said, every week we meet, and these meetings are community meetings. It's open to all, so please join us anytime. You can come once, you can come 100 times, it will all be helpful. And we meet Friday at noon, so we've met Friday at noon for 2 years. So there, it's problem definition. People offer bits of data here and there. People offer anecdotes and stories, and then we explore solutions. And everything's on Zoom. From there, once we have some sort of like, decent looking a scoped problem, then we go into prototype development, and then we start drawing into the academic world. So we say, who should we talk to design this platform? What kind of research should we bring in? What field should we approach? And also, this is also what kind of institutional support should we get? And then here on the institutional support, we have been incredibly lucky that our undergrads have driven that. Like they would call offices and be like, this is the right office to talk to. And then we would work with the tech students for implementation. After that, then we either give talks like this, or talks to community members, or we give talks at conferences. We do the IRBs, we do all sorts of like that kind of researchy end and getting feedback. And then we go back to problem scoping. So we just kind of circulate through this over and over. Okay, all right. So so as I was saying, this is driven by student leaders. So you're probably thinking like, what kind of fancy management system do you have to have student leaders leading like 30 volunteers? It's actually really very basic. So CAASI is all students. I'm the only like staff faculty member in it. So we have student HR, we have student finance, we have student communication, we have student marketing. And then for each project, there is right now about like 15 volunteers per semester. Some people stay all 2 years, some people stay half a semester. And they're managed by 2 student program manager and 1 tech lead. So projects are, all communications happen on Slack. And then I give kind of like general weekly goals to the program managers just on my Google Sheet, like we have a Google Drive. And then the program managers create dashboards in Notion to keep track of like what everyone's doing and sort of to like create a timeline. Right. Okay. So so the students, as I was saying, are recruiting and onboarding other students. And so this is basically our Slack number of active members and number of people posting, which is one way you can use easily to like measure the engagement in this like effort. So you could see there that is the BLM summer of 2020. So we had about 30 members in there. And then there's a dip here where we enter fall, or we're like, oh, we don't even know if it'll last past one summer. Then we go into fall, and then, you know, every end of semester there's a dip, and the students are like recruiting other students, and then it goes back up, and then, you know, again, and then there's this cycle going through, and then now in spring 2020 we've exceeded the level of engagement we had during BLM 2020. So I'm gonna now talk about, so I've talked about the academic setup, the context. I've talked about how Brief to Action is organized, and then now I'm gonna go through these 2 projects. And I'm gonna go fairly quick, and so that, you know, I can come back to things for questions later. But I'll start from the policing project. So the policing project is, that's the front page, a screenshot of our front page. But basically the issues that it's trying to deal with relates from police misconduct, difficulty in accountability, and political fragmentation in Allegheny County. So police-citizen relationship can either be friendly or fearful. And this depends on whether or not citizens have recourses when police misconduct happen, right? So what is a police misconduct? It's actions that violate individual rights, such as false arrest or assault, or even failure to serve. And studies have shown that a decline in accountability translates into increased misconduct. But accountability is very difficult, right? So if you pull any random person off the street and you say, what is the process of police accountability? They probably can't tell you, right? They'll probably say, file a complaint, and then he'll get fired or something like that. It's really not that simple. So in Pittsburgh, there's 2 ways of filing. There's CPRB, and there's the Office of Municipal Investigation. They're separate agency. So if you go to their website, you will see sheets and sheets of instructions like this, and you'll say, you know what, let me call APA or something, and it has to do this instead, right? So when we talked to community organizations, they told us that they get so many calls and people say, I don't know how to do this. Can you do this for me, right? And so they can't do their job because they're always answering those questions. But not only that, once you file, it may be ineffective due to contract provisions. So the 800,000 of US police officers, 80% of them belong to a union, and the role of a union is to protect their members' jobs. So they could have influence over investigation. They could be involved in legislative lobbying, and these union contracts have been identified as a barrier to police accountability. So organizations such as Campaign Zero have looked through many big contracts from big cities and come up with 6 areas that are barriers to police accountability. For example, disqualifying complaint that are too late, or limiting disciplinary consequences, or not allowing the media to have names or to report these things, or erasing misconduct records, right? These are just some of them. So these are known, but they're known sort of with a big organization nationally. And if you ask a random person on the street, how does this translate to us here at Allegheny County? What does that translate to our lives? It's very vague. And so these contracts are inaccessible to citizens because you have to do a Freedom of Information Act request in order to get them. And if you get them, you might get them for this tiny little area here. And once you cross the street, you're in another township or municipality with a different contract. So how many are we talking about? We're talking 130 municipality and 108 police departments, right? So this is just impossible for one citizen to deal with. So, so that's why what we built at ACPP is first an interactive police department map. So you can click through this map and see all the different police departments. You can look up the police department information, and most importantly, you can get into their police contract, right? So if you just click on this box here, you can download individual police contracts. But you might need help navigating it because these contracts are they're legal documents, right? They're really hard to work with. And so we create a guide for keywords, taking this Campaign Zero area of police accountability, we translate them into keywords in the local context. For example, disqualified misconduct complaints show up in Pittsburgh contracts as the word unfounded. If you look at unfounded, you will see a lot of things about throwing out misconduct complaint, right? With this, you can then search through almost 100 police contracts in Allegheny County, and then you can see how these words emerge, you know, in your township, in the township next to you, and you can map it and see the spread of these keywords, which is useful. Say, for example, if you're thinking about, you know, like a countywide ordinance, some sort of amendment, and then you need to organize. Okay. Also for the complication, you know, for the, like I show you those PDFs, they're like complicated to navigate. So we broke the process apart into this simple process. You know, you had an interaction, you're filing the complaint, people are reviewing your complaint, an investigation occurs, the result happens. And then we work with community organizer to figure out what kind of questions would citizens have, like in like plain language about each of this stage. Right. So we launched this in the last fall. And then these are some of the voices from our partners and site users. Campaign Zero was happy that we do this. And then our partner, Take Action Mon Valley, was really happy that we are focusing more on small departments, you know, from a data standpoint, because these are places that are really not under the microscope, right? And so these are places where data would really help. So some of the community reception has been good. And so our next step is to disseminate and to take this into community ownership. So how we want to do this, we want to make it so that it's really easy for any county. So here, your county policing project. We want to make it so it's really easy for any county to build this, right? So we're building like a master data sheet where we give you the columns that you need to fill in and the columns that you can change. And then we've recruited a new capstone, computer science capstone team to repackage the website as a Python package. And so you fill in this data sheet, you put the Python package together, ding, and then you get your county policing project, right? So right now we are talking to people in Hennepin County, Minneapolis, about building this for their county. All right. So the timeline is one that is very much transfer, right? So with multiple discipline. So you have GPSIA master student leading problem scoping with the community partner. You have undergraduate computer science building the first tool. And then you have the community partner coming in and then requesting like changes, like in this case, hyperlocalization. And then you have, so you have different people that are like well suited for different things. Like the master students led the RTK campaign and the municipal data collection. And then we had 3 capstones, like a data visualization capstone, an information science capstone, a computer science capstone, bring in all the elements of the website. And we have a PhD student in information science lead the IRB in the user study process. We also wrote something, we're writing a paper out of this, and then we had an econ PhD student join us as a tech writer and undergraduates doing design. And so, yes, so it's this constant transfer process between like people in different disciplines. So that was a blitz through the Allegheny County Policing Project. So I'm gonna take a deep breath. I think I'm good at time, but so then now I'm gonna take you through like our last.
You're doing
project.
Great, Sarah.
Okay.
You're perfect. You've got like 10 more minutes. Take the time you need. We have a great list of questions, but take 10 more minutes, and I think you're in great shape.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I think I would actually get to Karen's time goals. So let me now take you through our other project, which is 412 Connect. So the problem there is segregation. Like, I mean, you look at this map and then you see the problem, right? That's Oakland. That's where our universities are. That's where and then you see as the little dots are the Black-owned businesses. So this data, thank you to Cocopreneur and Black-owned PGH. They were the one that shared the data with us. So students just can't get there. Students don't know anything about them. And then this is reflected in our survey with the Black-owned businesses. So this is thanks to Data for Black Lives and Community Forge for doing the survey. And they don't feel connected to the college or university base, and they really want to improve this connection, right? And if you ask them what kind of help do they need help advertising, social media marketing. They need help connecting to people in the digital realm. So what do the students want? the students, this left bar shows that the students really care about supporting Black-owned businesses, at least the one we surveyed. They're like, this is important. There was just some statistic that came out about Pittsburgh having the lowest concentration of Black-owned businesses compared to other metropolitan areas. So they say, yeah, we need to support them. But here are the barriers. So this biggest one down here, 91%, is lack of information about Black-owned businesses, right? If we say, you need to support one, they're like, where? They don't know, we don't know where they are. They just don't know much about it. Like, what kind of stuff can I buy there? So the students aren't ready to purchase. Like they're like, oh, it was, the pandemic was happening. We're like, what if we order something? They're like, I don't know what to order. So they're not ready to purchase, but they're interested in learning more. They're interested in interacting on social media. So with that, we connect those two surveys. So the Black-owned businesses or the nonprofits in our next one, but for this one, the Black-owned businesses are these community members and assets that we don't know much about, right? There are community organizations whose role is to incubate them, to support them. Same thing with the students. I don't really know, for example, much about students in the English department, but they're academic departments where they're connected to them. So the platform should be in the middle, right? The platform should be connecting the Black-owned businesses with the students by using academic departments and community organizations. And so we've developed this curator model, which is we are going to talk to some community organization that supports a large number of smaller organizations. In this case, Riverside Center for Innovation signed up as our curator. And so they then talk to the businesses that they're incubating and then feature them in the scavenger hunt. And then we recruit academic departments who are interested in exposing their students to these community assets. So because this is students, and we translate this to research questions that students can write research paper out of. So one is a display problem, very common in the data science stuff. And then the other one is an incentive problem, very common so I'm a behavioral economist, very common in my field, right? Okay. So what you have is in the website is you have businesses that are featured. So for example, this is Jasmir who makes clothes for pets, right? So she's like a whiz kid, 15-year-old, create clothes for pets. So how should it be featured? Would be something like a trivia question. What age does Jasmir start sewing? And we had people not being able to find it. So we're like, okay, we're just going to tell you how to Google this. So if you Google this, you will find that Jasmir is in the URA website, right? And then you read through this and you would be like, wow, I have total respect for this little entrepreneur. And then here it says by age 10, she started sewing, right? So then you you answer the question, and then you're going to get points. So then you progress through the website with these badges. And for our first launch, these badges are connected to real credits. So at Pitt, there's something called the OCC credit, which is like volunteering credit. And then these badges can be traded for them. So we're looking for the right incentive system for CMU students for the orientation. So if anybody has one, I'm all ears. Okay. And then at the end, what does the Black-owned businesses get? They get a statistical report of the social media's growth and engagement through the platform. And then we also have a post scavenger hunt meeting to go through the statistical report and just make sure everybody understand what it's about. This was our fall 2021 curator was Riverside, as I was saying, and then the businesses that got on the site. And this process was pretty long. There was a lot of talking. There was people who didn't complete the onboarding process. We initially had 15, and then not everyone completed the onboarding process. And then we had 8 going out. But the reception was pretty good. So for example, Swagalicious restaurant said they got great feedback from the participant about their food, as well as people ask about catering. Riverside is happy to make a connection between the diverse businesses and the college community. And then the businesses were able to raise their social media presence. And then some of the businesses were also very happy about getting a statistical report really about their social media and then how students engage with their website and the kinds of questions that they produce. So wrapping it up again, with the timeline. So we started actually with staff members. So staff members were the one, so this is Diane Cohen at the Ford Institute. She proposed supporting Black-owned businesses. And the way she was thinking of it was very like administrative, like, so we'll bring in the Pitt contracting and this community organizations. And then CMU students start joining us, and then in Community Forge, and they say, you know what, like let's survey these businesses and see what they want. And then other students from other university came in, and then through that conversation arrived at the scavenger hunt idea. Also, people in corporate was also finding that this intention to help can harm as well. Like there was, Google had like a Black-owned business little like a way of displaying that. And some businesses were finding that it was used by people who wanted to harm the business by giving them very low reviews. And so we made sure that you have to make an account in order to get into our platform, right? And then that's why we only made this platform usable by people with like it's basically marketed within the university. So then in the spring 2021, we have a digital and interactive design capstone, and computer science capstone built the first version of the tool. And then in the summer, we had like a bones of the tool. We hired some of the students as staff to finish the development. And then we had RCA join as a curator, right? So we rewarded the students that were like doing really well in this area. Like they didn't have to have another, you know, we hired them. And then we launched version 1.0. We report the results, and then we got the feedback from the Black-owned businesses. And then PhD student wrote a paper from this, and then they won the ACM New Horizon Awards, right? So they got like, they were able to balance their career needs. So now we have version 2.0 for the Pitt, Homewood, CC, CMU, CSP, a lot of abbreviation scavenger hunt. Want to make it for Pitt and CMU students. And then CSP is providing us funding to have students as interns. So that's like the next stage of the development. Right, okay. So wrapping this all up, what are my lessons from our imperfect attempts to serve? So number one is that this is possible. This transfer, like one to another, to another, to another, this is possible. Other lessons, we learned that we have to make small commitments into the community and fulfill them no matter what, right? So like we had a lot of pressure to, for example, have individual police officers' name, and we say we cannot do that. Like the university is not going to let us do that. We had a lot of pressure to allow purchasing through our website for the Black-owned businesses. And then we say, there's a million ways that could go wrong. Like we cannot do that. And so some people were disappointed, but what we said we could do, we really did do, and took us 5 times more work and time to do the small things we committed to than we originally thought. So we're glad we didn't make big commitments that we couldn't fulfill. Another thing is be aware of the prevailing incentive system, right? So I think a big thing about this talk is just to be like, we all know this is the incentive system, but I think just to like see them out there and see how they interact with what we're trying to do is a useful conversation. And with that, be realistic with what individuals can do and can contribute under those systems, right? Like people might have good intention, but those systems really do structure their time and energy and attention. And so as individuals, we can't do that much because of the incentive system we're under, but as a whole, as an aggregate, as a community, as an ecosystem, we can contribute a lot. So we have to map the ecosystem and see what, as an ecosystem, we can contribute. Next thing to do is provide an infrastructure so that individuals can drop in and out of this ecosystem, right? Like don't make them feel bad if they have to leave. Like they have to leave, right? But have a structure so that they can plug in and out. And if they plug in longer, don't take advantage of their intrinsic motivation, but reward them, like give them a path forward, like promote them, reward them, like pay them. And most importantly, students in the community can lead here with faculty and staff support. So with that, I invite you to help us make it better. Join us Fridays at noon, open to all. You can participate 1 time or 100 times. Just email us at CAASI@pitt.edu. And then we'll direct you to a Google form where you can fill in like things that you're interested in. Then we send you a Zoom link, and then we will see you and we'll build things. Okay, so that is all for
Sera,
me. Thank you very much.
amazing. I got chills several times over. So this is fantastic. We're going to make sure that everybody gets the links, that everybody that has attended and gets access to this. So thank you. Now we're going to get to our questions. So Giselle, are you ready? You can unmute yourself. You can show your camera, whatever you feel comfortable with. Go for it. It's your turn.
Yes, thank you so much. I wanted to quickly revisit the first project you discussed, the policing project, because I thought it was really potent, and the work that you're doing is very, I mean, it always has relevancy. But I wanted to ask, how has Pittsburgh police and law enforcement generally in the county reacted to increasingly organized and formalized efforts made by the academic community to facilitate oversight and accountability? Have you gotten pushback? What has the process been like between Pitt as an institution and the institution of law enforcement within the area?
I would say that we have, so there's another organization at GPSIA called Connect that works very closely with the law institutions, and they're working very much, so in terms of working very closely with the police department, like, you know, they know a lot more about this than I do. But in our experience, like, we had people from public safety join us for a while, and they were very, very informative. They were like really helping us thinking through this process, and how like just knowing, I mean, they don't really know how to navigate each other's contracts as well, right? Like, this hyperfragmentation confuses everyone. So they're like, this is useful. Like, we can tell who has what provisions where. From everyone that we RTK, like pretty much all, but I think 2 or 3 responded quickly and very nicely. And so I think, you know, we have to put in a more concerted effort to have a conversation with them now that the site is launched, but it's been positive.
That's fantastic to hear. I'm really glad. And I know those relationships are difficult to navigate given the sensitivity of the issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jasmine Jones, I see you're here with us today. Are you comfortable asking your question live for Sera?
Sure.
Thank you.
So you touched on this briefly, but could you talk a little bit about how you discussed and organized the sort of tech transfer aspect of this, the handoff, when you kind of have conversations about who's going to maintain this after deployment?
So the question is, how do we do the handoff, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the handoff is
from the conversation side, like, do you only start the project if you know there's handoff capacity, or do you have that discussion afterwards, and then also how do you do it?
We don't. We start the project when there is someone who wants the product, but not as a steward, because I think like there's a really big difference between the demand for something and the desire to like steward a tech product, right? So I feel like, so I talked to this is Scott Wolovich from New Sun Rising, like we were discussing this transfer thing, and he was pointing out like how very few nonprofits are basically set up to be like a tech startup, right? And so we have to do the work of making it so they don't have to be a tech startup in order to do this. But for us to make the product so user-friendly, so easy to install and deploy and like customize, that takes many classes, right? If we, you know, because we're a very low resource organization. Like CAASI has like, I don't know, like $50,000 I can pull to 2019, right? So it's just like it's a volunteer organization. So we work through these capstones, and then I think that also gives us time to figure out like, okay, we have the product looking like this. Do you want it? No, it's too complicated. All right, let's do another capstone. And then let's like do this installation package, blah, 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 with like these, you know, write up from the Master of Library Science people on like how to document it. Do you want it? Still too hard. Okay, all right, let's go through another iteration of that, right? So as long as we sit here and are committed to transferring it at some point, there will be someone, it will get transferred. Like people know that we're looking, you know, for them to own it. But it will take time. And it's hard.
Thanks, Sera. You're so thoughtful in your responses, and I love the honesty, you know, like, and also the idea of setting small goals. It's kind of a good philosophy for life, frankly. Carlton Breen, we're so glad you found us today. and you sent your question in advance. Thank you. And now it's your time to ask your question, and feel free to send that link that you shared with me, with everyone after you've asked your question. The floor is yours.
Sure. Thank you. I think what you're doing is great. One of the things is that George Floyd and the impact it has had. I have been a victim of police overreach. I have had a gun pointed at me. I have been profiled as a drug dealer at a rent-a-car counter, in business attire, while paying with my American Express. And so we know that the issues that are there. And so quite naturally, you can become bitter, like I did, and angry, or you can get better and do something about it. And when I saw what happened with George Floyd and having 2 Black sons, I decided to do something about it. And so I developed an application that in your diagram, the name of my application is called Make It Home Safe. And so I decided to make a difference myself. And as you said, there's the 2 sides. There's the law enforcement and there's the motorists. And there needs to be some type of platform in the middle. Well, I have developed that platform that will allow for real-time remote transparency during traffic stops to help people like me and others. It's bigger than me, quite naturally, because even women are being sexually assaulted by police impersonators, believe it or not. And this app, it resolves this issue. Okay, and so now I have developed this application. It's ready. I'm ready to go to market. And now I'm reaching out to people like you to see how can you help me propagate this app to students in the community, especially in the Black community, from a digital standpoint, with law enforcement, the state, federal level, because it's an idea whose time has come. And how can you help me propagate this to help give peace of mind and safety for motorists, especially motorists of color, and law enforcement?
I think so. On my side, Carolyn, you should come. Like we should discuss. We should discuss. I mean, like APA was over last week, just like also asking questions about expanding features. So would love to talk to you. I mean, another one is I think like One Hood would probably like they're very good at educating the public about various options. And I think Karen probably has a lot of like a much bigger reach in terms of like technology propagation. So Karen, what do you think?
Well, I put you sent me, Carlton, the link, and I put it in the link for everybody to get access to. So I think we can help you get this. I think this is the idea that as much exposure as possible. And then I think the idea is, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, right?
Sure.
But there's always the unknown, sort of like what Sarah was talking about when Google put those little icons of Black-owned business, right? And then what happened is people were targeting them for, bad things, racist things.
Sure.
We want to make sure that this tool is used as a power for good, right? And that people aren't. So I think that's what comes to my mind is like and so pilot projects oftentimes like, and so I'm thinking I would like to keep the conversation going as well. And I think if there are folks who are here today and are interested in this, please let us know. But I'm just so grateful that you found us today, Carlton. I think what we have to figure out is how to ensure people's privacy. Like there's things like, that's what comes to my mind is sort of like,
of course.
So that's the kind of stuff that comes to my mind. And that's why you need to do these like little iterations, right? And you need to sort of figure stuff out, because you don't know until you know. And so you got to try to know. So I think we can keep this conversation going. I encourage folks who are here with us today, if they want to get more information, to reach out. And yeah, I just think this is great. I'm glad you're here with us, Carlton. And this is the kind, like, this is, transparency, I think, is the key message that you're trying to convey. And what's exciting is that technology oftentimes can be used as a tool to shine a light where there is no light. And that's what you're trying to do. But what comes to my mind is this privacy aspect that we just want to be mindful of.
And I appreciate that. And quite naturally, that is at the top of the list. I would love to, if you have like 10 or 15 minutes during noon or sometime, just let me know, and I will show you a live demo with a police officer of how the tool works. But you're exactly, data privacy is critical. It's important to most of us, and I have the highest levels of data privacy in place already. And it's an idea whose time has come, and I'm glad I found you as well. And great work by you, because I didn't know this existed. A CMU professor heard about it, and he recommended I come. Andrew Stocky heard about it. He came to my home and interviewed me, and that's what's on the link for the TV commercial. And I just want to save lives and make a difference. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Looks like you have some people already stepping up. So this is fantastic. Carlton, again, thank you so much. We have more questions. So we're gonna ask that you mute yourself if you don't mind. And Bobby Lincoln, you're up next to ask your question. Thank you.
Thank you. So Sarah, this is on a little different area of some of your research, but I was looking at publications of yours from the past, and I saw several focuses on incentive structures and dynamics of volunteer behavior. So based on those findings and your experience over the past couple of years with student volunteers, what advice would you give to small community groups that seek greater volunteer participation when there is lots of struggles in getting that kind of engagement?
So, you know, what's really funny, Bobby, is like, yeah, I study volunteering, you know, for my research, and like that's what I got tenure on, was like pro-social behavior. But really, like, this was just like so humbling, right? Like when I'm actually running an organization and I rely like so much on volunteers, I'm like, why do I feel like I don't know as much as I should know about this? It's so, I feel like it's very, so I think the one thing that I can take from my research to the real world is the importance of social environment. Right. So I think my first paper was actually about people who have gone through so much to like apply to be a tutor for School on Wheels, and so like still wasn't showing up. Like it's like they really were motivated, but then they didn't do the work to the extent they say they would do the work. And so we like, you know, we did some experiments on like trying to remove excuses, so like where the work is visible, accountable. So we realized like people really care about what their peers think, and creating environments where people are accountable from the get-go is really important. That's why we have you know, different, depending on your level in CAASI, like you track your hours. So all your friends could see, all the other volunteers could see like, okay, this guy's already put in like 2 hours to figuring out like the Docker or something like that. This guy's read documentation. And especially when it's crunch time, right? Because otherwise you're kind of wasting other volunteers' work when they're like waiting for someone else to do the work and someone dropped the ball. So we make it like, we have really hard conversations with people about accountability.
Thank you, Sarah. We're at the time, and this has gone by so quickly. Thank you, Bob Gradick, for putting some more information in here. I just quickly want to share with you, this is, we kind of teased this out a little bit. Scope-a-thon. Sarah and her team at GPSIA is going to be with us April 1st and 2nd. We're doing it with our colleagues at Carnegie Mellon and at GPSIA at Pitt. We hope you can find out, join us. It's going to be, you can see the URL down here, datasciencepublicpolicy.org/scope-a-thon. And with that, I just want to thank you so much, Sarah, for being with us today. We're so honored to have you. This has been great, and I'm so grateful for our fantastic audience, for you all coming in and asking great questions. Everything's we recorded everything. We'll make sure that all the links that people have provided will also be shared in today's write-up. Sarah, any last parting words of wisdom? I'm
putting in our 2 websites there, and then, you know,
perfect.
I hope you guys can, if you guys play with it and then find things that needs to be improved, like that's why we have an open meeting every Friday. So
Perfect.
12 o'clock would be policing and 1 o'clock would be the 412 Connect. So,
amazing. All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you everybody for joining us. Have a great day.
Thank you so much,
Take
everybody.
Care.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Karen. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you. All right.
Hi,
Take care.
welcome.
Bye-bye. Sarah, you were
Hi,
amazing.
Pontiana.